What's up, guys? I'm Hillbilly Dude, and today I'm going to bring you a few tips on how to extend the life and comfort of your boots. Now, these tips will apply to any kind of boots. These happen to be my working boots, but you can use this on your hunting boots, your hiking boots, or just your everyday wearing around town boots. So my first tip is laces. I don't like most stock boot laces. These are composite toe work boots made by Ariat. It comes with these laces, and most boot laces will be like this. It's like a braided core with this like cheap little outer coating. So I pull these out, throw them away. I like to replace it with paracord. And one good thing about paracord is it's usually about 10 cents a foot. You only need 4 or 5 foot to do both boots. So you're talking 40, 50 cents to replace your boot laces. And it's a lot heavier duty, it's stronger. You can get it in whatever kind of color, variety, pattern you want. It's readily available at a lot of retail stores, or you can have an even bigger selection if you go look online. But this is something that's not hard to get a hold of, and it works really well for boot laces. Plus, if you ever absolutely need to in a survival situation, I'd rather have this in my boots so I can pull it out and use it for a bow drill or whatever, rather than my actual boot lace. I just pull out the old laces, I thread in my new paracord laces, I take a little lighter and burn the ends first, that way you have something to work with when you're feeding it through the eyelets. And then very last, I tie a little knot in the end of it, just so that way if I ever am pulling this out for whatever reason, you can't unlace your boot on accident. You have to untie that knot or cut that little knot off. Also, with your own paracord laces, you can adjust the size of your laces. So if you're one of those guys that likes to tie it around the backside of your ankle, 2-3 loops, and then tie it off, your stock laces might not be long enough to do that. With paracord, you can make them as long or as short as you want. Another tip I highly recommend is going ahead and investing in a boot dryer, especially if you work in an environment that's going to be wet a lot. Where I work, I'm lucky if I can get 4 or 5 months out of a pair of boots, just because I'm constantly exposing them to moisture and chemicals and everything else that's slowly breaking them down. And honestly, just staying wet 24/7 is probably the biggest killer to your boots. Also, being wet 24/7 promotes a lot of bacteria growth, so you start getting pretty rank smells, and these bad boys stink. So having a boot dryer cuts down on that. It'll help cut down on the bacteria growth. It'll help dry out the boot inside and outside, which will make it last a lot longer. And these things can be found pretty cheap. I bought this one years ago at Walmart for like 30 bucks. And once I started doing that, I was getting several more months out of the life of my boots. And these boot dryers can be found cheap online. There's also a ton of videos and ideas out there on how to make your own. You can come up with something if you really need to. One like this is heated as well as blowing air, so that helps even more to dry it out a little quicker. It's got a timer. You can set it and it just starts clicking down, kind of like a kitchen timer. So these are worth their weight in gold if you work in a wet environment. Another thing I do is I waterproof my boots. Now, when you buy boots, they will say waterproof. This one right here says waterproof, and they were for like 2 months, but that doesn't last. You need to condition the outside of your boots, whether it's with leather conditioner or waterproofing spray, whatever. What I would recommend is as soon as you get these out of the box, go ahead and put an extra coat of waterproofing spray. It can be found pretty cheap at most, farm stores or boot shops or whatever. But just throw on a couple more layers of that on top, especially on all of your seams and on your leather and stitching and everything like that, because it'll help build up a little more barrier initially when you first get them. And then as you go, a month, 2 months, whatever, it's not a bad idea to touch it up. Now, sooner or later, you're going to spring a leak one way or another. If you wear your boots long enough, you're going to get little holes and stuff. You can see like these are not stitched soles, so most boots nowadays are glued. Some higher end boots are stitched, and I like that a lot better. But it'll start separating from the sole, these glued soles, and honestly, where you flex it, that leather will start to maybe form a hole, and you're just going to spring leaks one way or another. It's a matter of time. So once that happens, you get to what I call the point of no return. It's not going to do a whole lot of good to waterproof them at that point, because you're just spraying waterproofer on, gaping holes. That's not going to fix your problem. But if you have a lot of life left in your boots like these have, I'm not going to let a couple little pinholes stop me from wearing my boots just because my feet get wet. So now here's where we get real hillbilly. Take a bag, slide it over your sock, put your whole foot down in your boot, lace it up, you're good to go. Back in the day, I used to use bread sacks. Now my feet don't hardly fit most bread sacks, so that doesn't work. But if you want to try that route, get a loaf of bread, eat the bread, and save the sack, and just use it to slide over your foot, over your sock. And that, even if your boot leaks, nothing else, it will keep your foot dry. Your sock will be dry, your skin will be dry, and it'll cut down on blisters big time. I get blisters like crazy whenever I wear these boots that leak and I don't have some kind of liner to protect my sock, because as soon as that water starts coming in, your sock gets wet, the inside of your boot gets wet, and that wet cloth on cloth up against your skin just rubs it raw. I'm sure everybody watching this has dealt with that at some point. But yeah, try getting you a bag. This is just a little plastic bag. You can, you know, whatever packages come in or whatever, save you a couple bags that work. I use these. It doesn't bother me. I don't know it's there. Try to get it, you know, flat on the bottom of your foot so it doesn't feel like you're walking on a clump of plastic or anything like that. But you can figure it out. It's real simple, and it will keep your foot dry. Another tip that I would recommend is when you get your boots, if they're too tight on top of your foot, you can pull the soles out. Nowadays, we're pretty accustomed to comfort and having to have everything super soft and cushiony. But back in the day, I mean, you didn't really have a lot of that. So it's not gonna kill you to pull your soles out and wear your new boots, even if it's just wearing them on weekends or around the house or something like that, to help break them in. And it'll the discomfort of not having that little cushiony sole probably is going to be less than that killing pain on the side of your foot and your toes and the top of your foot and everything else from your boot just being too tight. And by doing this, it'll give you a little bit more of a comfortable way to break them in. Once the leather and everything stretches, you know, it won't take long, but once it stretches out and it starts becoming a little more loose and more comfortable, you can throw your soles back in. And I personally don't like most soles that come in boots. I just buy like the $15 ones at Walmart, get some that are good and thick and soft. And as long as you've got room for it in your boot, like as long as this isn't too tight on your foot, it's worth just buying a cheap pair. Now, obviously, insoles can get really expensive depending on what you get. And that's up to you if you want to spend that kind of money. But if I'm going to buy like a $150, $160 pair of boots, I'm not going to go and spend another 80 bucks on insoles. It's just not that big a deal for me. So I feel like I'm throwing my money away at that point. If that's something you want to do, go for it. But for an extra 10, 15 bucks to make this an even more comfortable pair of boots, it's worth it. Now let's talk about the smell. One thing you can do to cut down on the smell is definitely put these on a boot dryer. Keep them dry, keep that air movement in there every day. Another thing would be to spray them with disinfectant. Open them up real good, spray them with disinfectant, let them set, and make sure they're dry, of course. But also, one thing you can do is wear wool socks. Having wool socks on will help cut down on that smell a little bit if you've got really stinky feet or if you work in a really smelly environment. Cotton socks, for whatever reason, tend to hold that smell a little more. So you might try just buying you a pair of wool socks. They don't have to be the super thick insulated ones to keep your foot warm like in the winter. You can just get regular boot socks, you know, work socks in wool, and you might give that a try if you got a problem with a lot of stink. And my last tip is along the lines of breaking in your boots. I would recommend getting your boots, wearing them on the weekends. Don't just jump into your shift. I work 12-hour shifts. That is a long shift in a pair of uncomfortable boots. So if you're going to try that, at least bring your old boots or something comfortable with you. Throw them in your truck. Whenever you go to work, if you get 2 hours into your shift and you're working up blisters and your feet are killing you, you don't want to finish that other 10 hours. Go out to your truck, put on your other boots. Or, better yet, keep wearing your old boots. Whenever you know they're getting close to being broke down and you're going to need a new pair, go ahead and get you a new pair. Use them on the weekends, you know, here and there, maybe 2-3 weeks in a row. They'll loosen up. They'll get more comfortable. That's going to save you a lot of pain and headache versus just getting them and running into work and being miserable. And the same thing with your hiking boots and your hunting boots. I recommend breaking them in before you take off on that 10-mile trail or, you know, a weekend hunt or whatever, and you don't have anything else to wear. And also throw some leather conditioner on your boots whenever you get a new pair to help that leather kind of supple up and loosen up, and it'll break in a little quicker. And other than that, just put some miles on them, get them on your feet. That's about it, guys. I hope these tips have helped some of my blue-collar brothers out there. Keep on grinding. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.